Good morning, Charles. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. I am well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So what's on your mind?
Sounds like this is the beginning of a therapy session.
Yeah, or coffee talk.
Or coffee talk, a delicious dish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I finally made it to the movies last night. I believe for the last night of the Barbie IMAX screening, which explains why we're wearing our pink clothes.
Yep.
And that I frequently would wear pink dress shirts to work. And sometimes people would comment on it because people always feel like they need to comment on everything. And my favorite little joke to tell was, real men wear pink, and so do I.
That's good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is my new Aviator Nation polo that I ordered to go see Barbie on opening night, but it did not get delivered on time. So I finally got to wear it to see Barbie last night with you.
So basically, you didn't want me to see Barbie. You wanted to wear that shirt, and you needed an excuse to do it. So I just kind of fit the bill.
This was last night was the first time that I broke this shirt out in public because I knew I was going to be taking pictures of it. Mm-hmm. And now it's going to work its way into my normal work polo shirt rotation.
Nice.
But I wanted to spring it on everybody with the picture I posted last night of us at the theater.
Excellent.
And all right, so that was my second time seeing Barbie in the theater. It was your first time, and for some research before going to see it with you, I tried to watch Ben Shapiro's 48-minute review of the movie, where he just railed on it for like 48 minutes, saying how terrible it is. And the thing that people who are glued to their ideologies will do is like, it's not just about the politics. I don't just disagree with the message of the movie. It's a bad movie, and here's why it was a bad movie. One of the things he's like, I'm sure it's going to do great the first weekend, but after that, it's going to fall off because this is not a good movie. Meanwhile, it's the biggest movie of 2023, and I feel it's like, oh, I'm sorry, Ben. The free market, which you and I both love, it's kind of decided that it's a really good movie. So
I mean, I think part of the appeal and the charm and what they did well was getting people involved by wearing pink, right? And promoting it that way. And then people could get creative. And now the movie is kind of an accessory to people's, showing off their style and showing off what they're wearing. Right, yeah. And so it was really, the marketing for it was done really well.
Yeah, I know on opening weekend they had like the Barbie box set up, where people, mostly women, but people could go stand inside the box, get their picture taken inside the box. And I
mean, that's fun,
that's the thing. They did a great job.
I mean, other movies about our childhood toys and stuff like Transformers, they could have done something similar, right? I mean, I'm saying, they're pulling stuff from our childhood.
No, I agree. I agree.
They could do a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, it's almost like back in the day they did the Rocky Horror Picture Show. People get all dressed up.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either.
But I know how big of a production it is to go see it.
Right. Then they've got certain things you do, certain scenes in the movie, and so it's the original like 4D experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that they really did miss an opportunity with Transformers because number one, I mean, I hate those Michael Bay Transformer movies. I think they're garbage. Part of it is because the story centers on the humans instead of the robots. The robots are supporting characters, which is a huge mistake.
Correct.
The other thing is the robots in the movie, they went for some sort of photorealistic robots of vehicles that transform into robots. And so they look nothing like the toys or like the cartoons. Nothing like the toys or cartoons.
I mean, my whole gripe was Bumblebee. I mean, you are not a sports car. You are a little Volkswagen bug.
Do you know why that is? Because Volkswagen refused to pay Transformers to be in the movie because they didn't agree with their car transforming into basically a machine of war. Which is kind of ironic considering the roots of Volkswagen.
Yeah.
But
right. Yeah. Well, but they're always super. Listen, I got a German family and they are very super sensitive.
I know.
They've gone from one extreme to the other, to be honest with you, in certain
no, I get that.
Respects. So I could see them not wanting any type of controversy.
The movie studio could have just used Volkswagen Beetles anyway and then just not gotten paid to do it.
Right.
But instead they're like, no, Chevy will throw money our way and we'll just make Bumblebee a Camaro instead.
And ruin the fan base and piss off the fan base. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They still made enough money to clear a profit, but Gen X men like us were like, this is horseshit.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a cult classic by any means. It's not like I'm dying to go see the next Transformers movie because of that.
Yeah.
You know, like if you really kept it as close to the original cartoon as possible throughout every movie, I'd be there, man. I mean, I saw the cartoon back in the day, you know, the cartoon movie, and I bought the soundtrack, and
same.
I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah,
so good.
You know, they will occasionally drop characters from the original cartoon, and in the last movie, Rise of the Beasts, I think, which is the first Transformers movie, the most recent one that I saw in theaters since the first one with Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox and all that.
Yeah.
Because I heard that they were bringing in some characters from the original movie, and they did a little bit better. Michael Bay didn't direct it. They did a little bit better job with it than they had with any of the previous ones, but it's still nowhere near as good as the 1986 animated movie.
Yeah, I saw the first one, haven't seen any other ones in the movies, and I may have caught a couple of parts of them, you know, online or something like that, but yeah, I haven't made it back out after the first one.
Yeah, and I will. It's one of those. It's not an automatic for me. If I hear things about the story and if the reviews are good, then I'll go check one out.
Yeah.
If I have, you know, a free afternoon because I'm not paying, you know, evening screening prices. It's matinee prices only. But I think one of the things now, I wonder if little girl or women our age and older and younger are having similar discussions about how they handled the Barbie intellectual property. Like, did they move too far? I mean, there wasn't a Barbie cartoon though, and all that stuff. It was pretty much just the doll, wasn't it?
You're asking the wrong dude. Yeah. So I really don't know. There could have been. I mean,
there's probably like straight to video movies. If there's a way to make a nickel, and I'm sure they're putting stuff out like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure
it did have
they
the following. It wasn't the level that Transformers or G.I. Joe was.
No, but I'm sure they dabbled in a lot of different things.
Sure.
You know? I mean, she had more vehicles in that, like the jet ski and the camper and all the like. I mean, I knew. Corvette. I remember the vet and like the mobile home was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then like all this other stuff that I didn't realize, like there was like a space shuttle or like a space rocket ship, whatever. And I was like, yeah. And then one of the Barbies had, I don't know if they were showing at the end there. Actually, you could video like
video in the back,
and like her chest had the camera lens in it and stuff.
Yeah, that's super like, late 80s, early 90s,
right? I was like, holy cow! So,
so let's talk about the movie. I mean, obviously, I saw it for a second time, so I enjoyed it. I liked it, and I was anxious to share it with you. You know, one of the things from Ben Shapiro's review of it was he's like, I left that theater viscerally angry. I was like, what? It's like, I don't know anybody who could watch that movie and leave viscerally angry unless they were viscerally angry walking in.
We got to have that in you, right? It's not like it creates visceral anger, you know. I feel like, it's, you know, same thing when people talk about, you know, people who get roid rage and things like that. There needs to be a little bit of that rage inside, and then the lack of hormonal, you know, the hormonal imbalance makes our emotions go all nuts and stuff. So there needs to be some element of there. So I mean, as long as you're not blaming and saying, "Hey, this created this," you know, these.
I think that would be his position, and I've noticed recently from.
Did he get specific? Like, was there like?
I mean, it was 48 minutes. He got specific on everything. He had issues. Basically, here's the thing. I mean, there are a lot of reasonable, rational people on all parts of the political spectrum. I truly believe that. But
that's your first mistake.
When it becomes your job, though, like being outraged at the political opposition is how you make your living, then
you're almost obligated.
You've got to say
right?
yes.
Yeah.
You've got to be perpetually angry. Like this one guy he's not as big as Ben Shapiro, Sean Davis. I saw a tweet from him recently after, I guess it was football this last weekend, where Taylor Swift showed up at she's dating a football player now for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
She showed up.
All right.
She showed up at one of their games, and it became
how dare she?
This huge news story.
Why?
Because she's super famous, and anybody she dates becomes super famous too. I mean,
yeah, but you're going to support your boyfriend or whatever. Like, why is it?
People were and are obsessed with everyone she dates, and because she frequently writes songs about them after the breakup.
Oh, so that's I didn't realize that. Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to Miss Swift.
Yeah, and I'll forgive you for that. The yeah, so basically, this right-leaning political commentator decided to, get some clicks and some views off of the situation. He's like, Taylor Swift is dumb and her music sucks. And then somebody on the left was like, I pray that Republicans make this their platform for 2024 because that will be the end of the party. Oh. But here's what occurred to me was like, number one, this guy probably doesn't believe that. And number two, maybe he does believe that, but it's more important for people whose jobs it's their job to comment on political stuff in this country. It matters more to them to ramp up the outrage than it does for their side to win. Like, their side winning elections may or may not actually help them put more cash in the bank.
Yeah.
It seems like in this country, when your side is in the minority, that's when the figureheads of your party make the most money, because it's like, hey, everybody, our way of life is under attack and they're winning. We need to rally around and subscribe to my podcast and buy my book so that we can turn this around.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I got that vibe from Shapiro. Like, he was looking for reasons to be angry at this movie that were being created pretty much, in my opinion, out of whole cloth. Like, when you feel like your way of life's under attack, or the people that put money in your bank account, you convince them that their way of life is under attack.
Yeah.
It's easy to find things that correlate to that message in pretty much any pop culture, experiment that you can find.
I mean, look, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. And
go on.
I have my leanings, one way or the other, but I don't feel like the movie really pushed one agenda or the other based on, I felt like it was, I don't want to say fair. God forbid I said fair and balanced, but I feel like it kind of came together at the end, where it's kind of about like the human experience, and it wasn't, for me. That's my takeaway from that.
Yes,
and it was more about what it's like to be a good human, and why it's good to be alive, and what we should be doing as human beings, which is experiencing our feelings and respecting one another, and that's kind of my overall takeaway, and they did that in different little story, little different parts of it in different ways, and some of it was silly and some of it was was funny, but most of all was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean the things that I find completely uncontroversial about the movie was, the production design. It looked amazing. It was fun and engaging.
It looked like a big toy kind of
yes,
thing.
Right.
And that's where Transformers missed out.
Exactly. They try to make it a war movie.
Yeah.
Instead of showing off the toys.
Right. Yeah.
And they did a great job of showing off the toys. I loved the music in Barbie. I thought all the music was like dead on. And, I listened to a couple of the songs on the soundtrack fairly frequently. I thought, here's the thing. So yes, did that movie focus more on the struggles of, living life as a woman in 2023 in the West? Yes, it did. I would say that it did. It focused a little bit more on the challenges that women face in the real world than it did on the challenges men face. Not exclusively, but I would say it was weighted a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
But for somebody to respond to that by saying, wait a second, you didn't give equal time to how hard it is to be a man and how hard it is to be a woman, therefore you're anti-man, which is what some of the reaction that's out there is.
The movie is about Barbie.
I know.
And it's not about Ken, right?
Right.
It's not, so of course it's going to be weighted in that way. And just as another movie, could be way more about male stuff. Like,
plenty of movies like that.
So, it's not, and the things that they were bringing up as struggles, it wasn't anything like, oh, I didn't realize that.
Right.
It was very obvious things that I think most people are aware of, or if you take a second to breathe, you realize, oh yeah, wow, this is kind of, and one of the things that I was kind of when the main character, not Barbie, but the mom was talking about it and basically kind of was listing out all of the issues and stuff.
That's how she broke the Barbies out of their brainwashing.
Yeah. And I think my biggest takeaway was stop. As human beings, we need to, men and women, there's always going to be somebody with an opinion that thinks you should be doing this or should be doing that. Because that was like a big, long monologue of should and should and should and should.
Right.
And she just kind of consolidated all of these little pockets of shoulds, right?
Right.
And fortunately, I think most of us don't live in a world where we're constantly being fed all of those shoulds at the same time, because we go fucking nuts. Can I drop the F-bomb on our podcast?
We just make them all
right. So anyway, all right. So, and to me, that's the world that we're living in terms of the amount of marketing and attention. We talk going back to Sam Harris about attention is the most precious thing.
Right.
And I think all of those shoulds are coming from places that want our attention, and we have to find ways to be able to ignore those, avoid those, take those in and then dismiss them and push them away, and not let it penetrate our blood-brain barrier or whatever, right? And reside in us. So I took that away as, yes, these are things that the women are dealing with, but the overall feeling and message that I was getting was, even as a man or as a human being, we're getting bombarded with all of these should messages from all of these people who don't know who we are. They're talking about their own experience, or they've got other things that they are trying to sell us, and just so to me, I didn't feel like, oh, this is only about women.
Yeah, I definitely didn't feel like it's only about women. I feel like it did shine a light on some of the struggles that may be unique to women compared to men. But then with the Ken story, it also did focus on some of the stuff of what it means to be a man. And one of the things we talked about on the podcast before, and you and I have shared in our conversations, is the energy that or the triggering that happens whenever some guys hear the word patriarchy. It's like immediately guys will go into this mode of, I have to defend myself, where I would encourage men to not feel like whenever you hear the word patriarchy, your personal conduct or your personal character is being attacked. Because, as you and I have said, in my opinion, patriarchy is just another word for the establishment. Like there is a group of people that are going to be at the top of any hierarchy, whether you're living in a capitalist society, socialist, communist, whatever. There's going to be people at the top, and those people are going to be invested in keeping the status quo as the status quo is, because it's working out real well for them. And then if you want to just highlight one of the demographics of that group on the top, for the last 100,000 years, it's mostly been dudes.
Yeah.
Because of our upper body strength, because of the fact that we can run faster, the fact that we're a little bit better at executing wars against other tribes. I mean, for whatever reason, we've been at the top of those hierarchies, regardless of the system of government, for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And the word that we assign to that historical fact is patriarchy. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't offend me. And it doesn't make me feel like I'm being personally attacked for my conduct.
See, yeah, I think where that comes from. So if you haven't figured out, what's interesting to me is I like to figure out why about stuff, right?
Sure.
Or my ideas about why this happened. And I think it's because when we were introduced, nobody was using that word a couple of years ago.
Right.
And then, but the people who did introduce it did it from a very angry place, or a very scared or fearful place. And so I think a lot of us have this association with the word patriarchy with these really strong emotions, right? And a lot of it might be fearful, might be anger, whatever that might be. But what we need to do is take a look and go, well, can we be a little more specific? Because what part of the patriarchy are you specifically talking about?
Right.
So one, need to kind of take the emotion out of it and go, okay, what are you talking about? Like you say patriarchy, but that could apply to a lot of different things.
Respond with curiosity, not defensiveness.
And so it's like, okay, in what specific situations is this making you upset? Because it's not going to be everything, obviously, but let's get specific. So I think as humans, our brains tend to want to make things easier. So when we hear words like Republican or Democrat or patriarchy, we immediately have some sort of visceral, reaction to those words. They might be triggering type of words.
Right.
And now it's even more difficult to think clearly because now our emotions are like going nuts. And it's like, we're in that state. It's like, are we even open and receptive to having a conversation about things? Can we get curious and ask questions and get specific? It makes it more difficult for sure. And I think that's what the patriarchy or the establishment, that's what they want. They want, I think, the average person to be really reactive and emotional, because if we are reacting and emotional, then we can be controlled. And ultimately, I believe that's what the establishment wants, is to be able to control us.
Yeah, I remember, not too long ago, Sean Hannity and James Carville. James Carville was a Democratic strategist, real big, bald-headed guy.
Yeah, what movie was he in? Where he came up and he was like one of the debaters.
Yeah,
somebody had to debate him, and they were like, "Oh my God, James Carville."
Yeah, I remember him being in something like an Adam Sandler movie or something like that.
Might have been. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
But so him and Sean Hannity went on this like nationwide tour doing like arenas where they would debate each other.
Oh, wow.
And neither of them wanted to acknowledge the fact that both before and after the debate, they're both sitting in their green room, sipping on whiskey and counting their money. And it's so much, thanks to social media, in big part, politics in this country is pro wrestling, essentially.
I was about to say that totally reminds me of the wrestlers, because
they're buddies in the locker room.
Yep,
and they hate each other in the ring.
What was it? It was the Rock, where he had that TV show for a little bit.
Where he's training people or whatever. Yeah,
and they showed the history of, because he come from like Samoan wrestlers, and his mom was, or his grandmother ran the wrestling ring in Hawaii or whatever, and basically showed like the Iron Sheik and the good guys were always like hanging out, and they were like really this tight knit group, and that's really what drove it home. It's like, oh wow, yeah, these guys are just entertainers.
I know, and
they actually love each other, and it's that it's that yin and yang, right?
And it's so funny to think that some of the people today who are so vocally loyal to one side or the other, they'd be the first ones to say how stupid pro wrestling is. But it's like, you're kind of a pro wrestling fan and you don't know it. I mean, these people are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every single politician's like that. I believe there are probably some people that get in front of a camera and actually say what they believe and work toward it. But for the most part, I mean, it's the same reason that Congress, regardless of what party's in control, isn't going to do away with the congressional health care plan. They're not going to institute term limits. I mean, you don't see any of them, regardless of who's in the White House or who's in charge of the House of Representatives or who's in charge of the Senate. Nobody is pushing for let's lower our own status compared to the average American and make things more equitable, to use another buzzword. It's like, no, once you get to that position, you're not, you might campaign on those things, but you're not actually implementing them once you get in the seat.
Yeah, because what's their incentive to do so? They don't have a negative incentive. There's no consequences for anything anybody does anymore these days.
Right.
And at the same time, there's no incentive for them. What do they get out of that?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Ken story, which I found very interesting and compelling. And one thing that occurred to me is that, and I'm sure the Greta Gerwig, the director, and I think she got a writing credit on the movie as well, would probably just be appalled to hear anybody say this about her work. I saw some parallels in the Ken story between with a lot of the stuff Jordan Peterson talks about.
In what way?
basically having a society full of, and we'll refer to Ken as a man or a young man, even though obviously in that universe, there is no reproduction. There doesn't seem to be any jobs for pay. So the incentives and the drivers of those characters aren't exactly the same as what they are of people in the real world.
Yeah, but nobody beaches like Ken.
That's true. Yeah, I knew you were going to like that joke. I was like, this is the part Dan's going to really enjoy.
I am so immature.
Yeah. But essentially a society full of men who have no mission, no purpose, no reason for waking up in the morning. It's like it's like we've got loaded guns just walking around all the time. And as soon as some ideology makes them feel like they're important, makes them feel like they belong, they're going to go off and do potentially irreparable harm to the society that we live in. And I mean, Ken's story is a story of codependence, like right out of the book.
Yeah.
And he, at the beginning of the movie, he is living for the purpose of getting validation from the woman he's in love with. And when she doesn't give it to him, he's just, an open wound waiting for something to crawl in there and infect it. And that's what he found when he comes to Los Angeles, which is what Los Angeles does to people. And sure enough, he got corrupted by the worst parts of our society, and then brought it back into Barbie land and started changing things, not for the better.
Right. Yep.
So, I thought that it's interesting to see the message of, how destructive codependent men can be to themselves and to others, which is a story I don't think we see enough in modern media.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, even right at the end there, I think it was a good consolidated couple of minutes where right before Ken discovers that he's Knuff.
I love that.
That's a great shirt. He's like, he tries to kiss Barbie and then he's just completely confused. And I feel like a lot of men also feel that way in society. It's not knowing what to do. Like, he grabs her and kind of gives her a dip to kiss her or whatever. Right. And she's like, no, that's not what I want.
Right.
And then he's like, well, and then he starts crying and then he's like all over the place. He's just absolutely confused.
Right.
And I feel like that was a very also accurate reflection of what a lot of guys go through in terms of, and to bring it back to actually, Canwell with our Atomic Attraction, one of the chapters he's talking about, how Valentine's Day people treat Valentine's
looking forward
Day.
To getting into that one.
And, listen, man, I have acted as one of in the story that Canwell talks about in terms of, having these expectations based on, programming from wherever, from people, society, wherever, in terms of, how to behave on Valentine's Day, and then just when things don't go the way I think they should go. In the past, I'd get really upset, and I'm a little ashamed to admit, as an adult, I've gotten so confused. I was crying at one point in relationship because I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do,
I've been there
and
too.
all I know is my expectations haven't been met,
right?
And I don't know how to handle it, and I don't know what to do, and I just completely broke down one time. So, and I was not a child; I was a full-grown adult.
No,
so I've learned from it.
I've been in the exact same position, and I did like that. At that part we're talking about, the end of it. Barbie did apologize to Ken for taking him for granted, and she did play a part in treating him like, oh, he's an accessory to my life. And, it's not clear how aware she was at the beginning of the movie that he was in love with her. He wanted to be her boyfriend. He wanted to, move into her house with her eventually and have that relationship.
All right.
We don't know for sure how, at least I didn't pick up how aware she was that was going on the whole time.
Well, you know why?
Why?
Ken had full of covert contracts.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
He didn't express anything. He was too scared to communicate anything. Remember?
Yeah.
Like he was, and they show him like kind of walking off after she's like, oh, it's girls' night every night. And then he's like kicking, he's like, pretending to kick him by himself.
I love you too.
Yeah.
Like pretending you're right. There were things that he was scared to tell her.
So not totally Barbie's fault here.
No, I wasn't. I am not. Yeah. I didn't know how much of that she was clued in on. She may have suspected it, but ultimately, like you and I talk about all the time, you don't, people don't get credit for their unspoken needs.
And now, again, I'm going to blame Barbie here a little bit. In this world that Ken was living in was, it was so focused on women and that Ken wasn't feeling secure enough or confident enough to express himself or to feel like, hey, maybe I have enough value. I don't have enough, I think he was basically under the impression he didn't have enough value to express his needs.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter what I want or what I need because I'm not worth much. And in that world, he wasn't. And I think that was what was good about the movie was that it showed an extreme that you don't want to, yes, we want to absolutely encourage women and support them and everything else like that. But to go to that extreme of the Barbie land beforehand, that's not good either. And I think it's a nice way to kind of, I'll be honest with you, send out like a warning, like, hey, look, things, if we continue to get really extreme with things and think in extreme ways, this is the type of society we could end up with. And that's not good either. Right. So don't let that pendulum swing from all the way from one side to the other, which tends to happen. And a lot of times when it comes to society and culture and politics and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, in societies where, the oppressed either revolt or rise up or politically become the majority, the very human impulse is, okay, I've been oppressed long enough. Now it's time for you to feel what it's like.
Yeah.
Instead of, pushing for equality, sometimes it's like, okay, I didn't like it when I was on the crappy end of the stick. Now we'll see how you like it.
Right. So, I mean, so I think where we got to be careful is realizing that because things are changing, people do empathize. People are feeling and understanding the suffering of the other people. Yeah. They didn't experience the same suffering. However, they can at least recognize that, hey, this isn't right. We need to do this. They feel, and so, and then as human beings, we tend to get vengeful sometimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So, I did really enjoy that, the ending where, he kind of figures out that, he doesn't have to define himself by whether or not she returns his affections. And, I don't know what the next step for Ken in Barbie 2 is going to be.
Yeah. So we talked about that. And that's what that's where I was kind of a little bit critical of the movie, I guess I should say, because to me it was like a vacuum. Like I didn't see an obvious reason why Ken all of a sudden was like, I'm Knuff. It was just, all the guys go, all the Kens going, well, Ken is me. I'm Ken. Ken is me. And I didn't see really other than, like where did you go? I know where you came from in terms of feeling like you weren't enough and you didn't have any value.
Yeah.
And so it just wasn't as obvious to me where, what exactly happened or what, where they were going. So, but I agree with you. It's got to be the first step is, hey, look, this isn't right. And then there's a little bit of vacuum, but then it's like, okay, then who is Ken? Like, what does he like to do? What's his mission? What's his purpose? Why is he here? That wasn't clear to me in the movie, but I think, maybe that's a great question to answer in Barbie 2.
Yeah. Now that one of the things that just occurred to me as you were saying that was, I wonder, it almost seems like another facet of his codependence, in that you can't be to get that sense of identity and that sense of self that is separate from your relationship with other people. In my own experience, it's like you need to go through some sort of a journey to earn that.
Yeah.
But in that movie, thinking about it, it seems like she talked him into, no, you're valuable on your own. And that doesn't seem to be the way that it really, like.
It might be a way of at least opening your mind to the possibility.
Right.
But for it to like sit with you, and for you to believe it, you need to get your senses involved. You need to experience it, like you just said. You need that journey,
right?
And kind of like you do, like what you do is you go on, a lot of these solo trips and things like that. These journeys, and you're experiencing life, and you have time by yourself to then process things and think by yourself. And so that's something I'm trying to do a little bit more as well. And I really forget how much value there is in doing those, and how much I enjoy that. But I agree. There was no real journey yet, but maybe they're smart enough. Maybe they've thought about this already.
Yeah.
For the next movie.
Yeah. Which, look at how much money it made. There's almost no doubt that there's going to be a sequel, and, hopefully they keep the same people involved, and they're able to, turn it into something. It's always tough to live up to the original, but that creative team seemed to have a very solid vision of what they were trying to pull off, and a studio that let them do it. And even Mattel, that's a big gamble for Mattel to put their name and their intellectual property, and to have the character of their CEO be kind of a bumbling, wacky guy. That takes some guts.
Will Ferrell could have been much more bumblier and wackier. Yeah. They probably put the reins on him a little bit.
Maybe, but that is a risk for a public company to take with their brand and their reputation. I'm
curious how Mattel's been doing up until that movie. Like, were they struggling at all?
Maybe.
I'm just wondering, how much of a risk was it? Because it could have been an investment. Like, hey, things are struggling, and now maybe I'm sure they got a nice little boost.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Absolutely. Yeah. In Walmart, there's big Barbie displays now with, the different vehicles and houses and stuff from the movie tied right into the toys.
So this probably paid off.
I'm sure that it did. Gosh, I'm sure. Yeah. It would probably be difficult to put a number on what that movie contributed to the economy as a whole when you consider the marketing and the.
I think how brilliant it is, because the people who have the money now are the ones who grew up with Barbies, and now their daughters or whoever are like excited about the toys that, so if we had kids and they were into Transformers, or Legos, we're a lot more likely to, because we're going to get that thrill as well. So
I don't have kids, and there's a new series of Transformer toys that's called like Gallery 86 or something like that.
Okay.
It's
I'm not familiar.
Reimagined, way better looking versions of the characters from the original series.
Oh.
And they release a new one every so often. It's not just boom, vomiting a whole new toy line. It's like the latest one is like the version of Starscream that is at his coronation in the movie, where he's becoming the leader of the Decepticons. He's got the little crown on and everything.
Wow.
And I get ads for that stuff because occasionally I'll watch Transformers related content on YouTube, and it's some pretty cool looking stuff.
Do you still have any of your?
No, they.
I've got a couple in the other room. Have you seen them? Have you seen? Okay, yeah. Soundwave is my favorite. Because the cassette player.
Yeah, with little transforming cassettes.
Oh my gosh, man, that's my favorite guy.
Yeah, I remember one of the frustrating things when I was a kid was Soundwave's main cassette that had the most screen time on the TV show was Laserbeak.
Right. Laserbeak, yes.
But the easiest one to find was Buzzsaw, who looked like Laserbeak but slightly different colors.
It was gold
instead of red.
Yep.
And so you would
That's right.
Yeah, Laserbeak was hard to find in stores, but Buzzsaw was very easy to find. And you had to explain to your parents, no, I don't want Buzzsaw, I want Laserbeak.
It's the same thing. No. This one's red. This one is red. I want this
matters
one.
So much. You have no idea. And so, I remember going through that when I was 9 years old, 10 years old.
I went through the same. I remember going, that's hysterical.
All right. So let me see. Was there anything else I wanted to take away from that movie? I thought it was great. It helped me understand things a little bit more. Just seeing how much it resonated with the women in my life was a big deal, and being able to just connect with some of them over what that movie meant to them, and again, the big part where America Ferrera's character sort of has that monologue where she talks about all the frustrating pressures of being a woman. It's like, I know that hit a nerve with a lot of ladies that saw the movie, and I've had some good conversations with them as a result of it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hopefully, most people take away from this and just ignore all the noise, right? Do what you can, be a good human being, feel the feelings, be alive. And that's kind of was, the ending there. I mean, I am a little upset that Barbie stole the Pinocchio ending, but
yeah, that also does make for some interesting possibilities in the sequel. I mean, I think it's been out long enough. We don't have to worry about ruining it. But yeah, now that she's human, I like the symbolism too, that she, at the end of the movie, she's wearing a pink pair of Birkenstocks instead of the high heels.
Oh, I didn't see that. I missed that they were pink. But the thing that I appreciated that was funny was in the movie when Barbie was complaining about how ugly she was. The narrator broke in, and it was just like, you really don't want to, cast Margot Robbie, for this specific scene. And I appreciated that they didn't take themselves so seriously.
For sure.
And I think that's why any of the slight, the political or cultural, social type of commentary or scenes that they had, it was a little bit easier pill to swallow because, it wasn't preachy.
I was going to say the same thing. I didn't feel like I was being preached at any point in the movie. I felt like I was being entertained by the movie.
Yeah.
And
I really thought it was going to be more preachy based on, again,
how people reacted
to it.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, I even walked in with some preconceived notions and stuff like that, but you really were raving about it. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll be open to it. And I got an excuse to buy another shirt. So it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. So did I. And I look forward to, putting this in the rotation and wearing it to work so that people can make their little comments about me wearing a pink shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to do my little joke back to them. And then, step 3, take over the world. I don't know what happens, but all right. Good. I think that's, So if you haven't seen Barbie yet, I think it's on digital media now. I think you can get it buy it on Amazon and wherever you get your movies, Pirate Bay, and no, don't do that. That's against the law. Very wrong. Don't do that. But I would say check it out if you haven't seen it already. I think you'll be entertained, and there may be some parts depending on what your social and political ideas are. You may get a little uncomfortable, and I promise you'll survive being a little uncomfortable. It's not going to kill you.
I think it's part of the human experience is getting uncomfortable.
It should be. I mean, I think that, I've said to multiple people over the years, as adult men in particular, we sometimes find ourselves in situations with our personal and professional lives where after we leave high school or college or the military, we don't ask ourselves to do anything uncomfortable anymore.
No, because we were so uncomfortable, I think, for so long.
Right.
Just like, I need a break,
Yeah.
All right, take your break. But if you really want to feel things and live that human experience and have some meaning to your life, you got to get uncomfortable every now and then. Not all the time.
Right. And I'll tell you what, voluntary discomfort beats the hell out of involuntary discomfort.
You can handle the involuntary discomfort because that's going to come at some point. So practice with your voluntary discomfort. So then when the involuntary discomfort comes, it's a lot easier to handle.
Yeah, that reminds me of one thing I heard, that when it comes to PTSD from wartime, special forces operators get PTSD far fewer than just normal, quote unquote, normal soldiers, guys who are like infantry and stuff like that. And the reason is because when you're special forces, you're the one that is initiating the violence. You're not just trying to drive down a road and then a bomb goes off.
Oh,
it's because you're the one who is, you know what's coming and you're choosing to put yourself in the situation. They often leave those very brutal, very bloody situations with less PTSD than the guy who's just randomly working on fixing a truck and then a shell comes down and blows up near him.
Wow. So my question is, does that though make you a little bit more of a sociopath?
I mean, it might make
or give you those tendencies if you are then completely numb to the craziness that you're inciting, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, things
it's a
like,
question. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean,
assuming
from what I know about sociopathy, psychopathy, there's always got to be a mix of, you've got to have a certain genetic profile and then a certain set of experiences, and then they kind of come together to make you into one of those things. And, generally you don't get into the military until you're at least 18. And I doubt you become a special forces operator it's got to be a few years after that. I feel like those kinds of disorders, you either already have them or you don't by the time you hit legal age to sign up. And so your coping skills can certainly be impacted, and the way that you deal with problems, I would imagine, and again, this is the opinions of a humble, uneducated genius. So keep that in mind. I'm sure that there's people out there that could correct me on this, but I don't think that being in that position where you're having to take out the enemy is going to turn you into a psychopath if you're not already one, or a sociopath. But it could certainly impact how you cope with trauma and things like that.
That's something I'd like for us to look into at some point, is understand what kinds of coping skills or support mechanisms are there for people who are in those positions. Like, how do you deal with that if you're not a sociopath or psychopath? Like, how, and you're doing these things, how do you live a normal life, or do you even live a normal life, or how do you function? And handle that type of situation? To me, I'm ignorant when it comes to that.
Yeah, I can't speak to it from a medical standpoint, but just from a historical standpoint, it seems like the way that has been accomplished is a process of othering your enemy, where that's what propaganda is for, essentially. When you sell the entire population of the United States on the idea that, well, these Germans or these Japanese, they're not really like us. They're not humans walking around, doing their jobs, loving their families. They're not like us. So when it's time for you to get on a boat and go across the ocean to kill as many of them as you can, it's a little easier if you don't see them as being human in the same way that your friends are human, or your buddy, in the boat next to you is human.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be the way that we've pulled that off for the last 10,000 years. It's like,
that's over now.
I hope so.
I mean, hopefully between communication and how much we travel and global communication, and I think it's a lot more difficult to get more people. I think there's going to be people that we can talk into that garbage thinking, but I think it's going to be it's a lot less. And so there's got to be a lot more tricky psychological manipulation that's being done at the establishment levels in order to control us and get us to do what they want us to do.
Right? But I would say that, there's probably still a little bit of that goes on with certain Arab countries and with probably the Chinese as well. And I don't know if our government does it on purpose or it's just something that happens, but it is hard to think of people in those distant lands with very different objectives and different lifestyles than us as, they're just like me. Those are just, moms and dads and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters just like us.
Well, yeah, that's why it's difficult to get any type of news media directly from those countries.
Right.
In our country, a lot of times people think, we're land of the free. Well, we don't have all the information. We're so, and we can get it. It's just difficult. It's really difficult to get that information. So anyway, let's get nothing to do with Barbie. Let's call it a day here.
Okay. Yeah, Barbie. I love the movie the most for the conversations that have happened as a result of it, and I think that's where the value of art and media can be found. Where you don't have to agree with everything that the writers, directors, painters, sculptors put out there, but if they're putting out stuff that is worth having conversations about, then I'm all for that. Yeah. And I feel like that's what the purpose of art is. And so, it was a good one. Go see it if you haven't seen it. All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you going to see it with me.
I had a great time.
And I enjoyed talking to you about it. All right. Take care. See you next time.
Yep. Have a good one.